Now the hard part's over, we're going to start with the next several steps. The next step is I'm going to take the brush and I'm going to make sure that my board is nice and clean. And then I'm going to take some sandpaper and sand all these grooves down to where they have kind of a rounded off texture instead of this very, very rigid squared off edges. Then I'm going to take my spackling compound here, my drywall compound, and I'm going to go in and fill in all of my grooves as if it was grout in tile. And it's still going to leave an indentation, but we do want to do that. And anywhere where the line is messed up or something, like on the other side where I had to cut it twice, I'm going to fill that in with this spackling compound and smooth it over so that you won't be able to see it in the next part. Next, I'm going to hammer in my little feet pegs into both sides of the board, and then I'm going to texture it with some sand. I've got my sand here and some PVA glue and a brush. And then this is the part that I forgot in the last video, is my primer coat, and I'm going to use some, this is interior latex flat paint, and this is a gray. This is a kind of a battleship gray, and this can costs about $10, and I've used this can of paint like for several other projects. I like to get a nice gray and use it for several different projects, because gray is a nice base coat for anything that you want to look like steel or stone or any of that kind of stuff. And I also got, for the other side, I got this red here, this kind of reddish color. And this I got in the clearance part where somebody wanted a different color and it ended up like this and they didn't want it. So this was like, this whole gallon jug was like $5. So that's going to be for the other side. And I'm going to start these steps off. I've finished sanding my grid, and this is a step you can skip, sanding the grid, but it does remove any splinters. It gives it a much more polished look. It gives it a much more finished feel. And now I've moved on to filling in my cracks with my drywall spackle. Now you can use plaster, or you can use wood filler, or whatever you're using to do this step, but I have this left over, and this is what I'm using. So I got my little thing, and I'm just filling in my cracks here, and I'm going to get the whole thing grouted in, and then I'm just going to take my finger and pull out the excess so that my lines stay visible, and then I'm going to scrape it off and move to my next step. In this section, I've decided to use this side as my gray side. I picked this side as my gray side, and I texturized little humps in some of the squares with my spackle compound so that it gives it a rough terrain. And I've painted some PVA glue onto certain areas and sprinkled sand into those areas, and I've let all of this dry, and I put my little feet here. Now these feet, the nails were made out of brass, and some of them wanted to bend and give me a hard time, and I had to do a couple of them over. So next time I'm going to be a little more careful. These came out okay, and when I flip it over and do the other side, I'm going to be a little more careful here. But I'm going to get a brush, and I'm going to brush all my excess sand off of here. And I'll be ready to do my paint. Got my fancy mixing stick here. So I'm just going to go ahead and start painting. Okay, now I'm using an interior latex flat, so this paint is going to shrink a bit, and so the texture is not going to be too bad. But you want to try to get rid of as many brush strokes as possible by just stippling it here. And now, if you miss a bunch of stuff in the cracks and stuff, don't worry about it, because we're going to paint this like 3 or 4 more times. So if you're missing spots, don't get too, picky about it. I'm just trying to eliminate as many brush strokes as possible. Even though when this dries, it's going to shrink down and it's going to turn real flat, and my contour is going to come back to an extent. So we've got our primer coat on here, and it looks like crap right now, but when we come back in the next day in the morning, this is going to look a lot better. And we'll work on the next step after that. I let this set overnight, and all of our texturing has dried and all of our sand and everything. And now I'm just going to add color on to give it depth. And to do that, I'm going to use black, dark gray, and a lighter gray. Now you can dry brush this and overbrush this using regular paint and brush. But since this is such a large area, I'm just going to go ahead and spray paint it and add my depth that way, and maybe do a little detailing, but this is just for a broad spectrum kind of thing. So first, I'm going to start with my black, and I'm just going to be really, really light with this. And this is going to be a misty coat of black. Get a close up. And you can see here my rough patches. Next color is going to be gray. And we're going to highlight it off with some light gray, almost a white. It's called lake gray. And there we go. And I'm going to let this dry.